Listen, we're gonna move very quickly over to Greg Fair, who is in Mountain View and got up early to join us. Thank you, Greg. Greg is going to talk to us about a project that when I stumbled across it, I was actually a little surprised, to be honest. This is a Google-led consortium of some of the major tech companies. It's now called the Data Transfer Project, and it's really meant to build the tools and systems that help individuals or enable individuals to move their own data around between providers more seamlessly. And if we're very lucky, Greg will share with us the original name of the Data Transfer Project, which was, I think, a little bit more exciting. All right, Greg, are you online?
I will touch on that. Hi, everyone. John, nice to hear from you. Oh, great, and you stopped sharing so that I can share. I had a chance to meet John and Tim, I guess it was a month and a half ago, and we walked through Solid and Interrupt, and I'll talk a little bit about that too. Okay, let's see here. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, and do you see a full screen or do you see stuff with stuff on the side?
Full screen.
Okay, great. So you see agenda?
Yep.
Excellent. I will be brief. We don't have to run through all of it, but I did prepare enough to certainly cover the full 15 minutes. So my name is Greg Fair. I may or may not have with me today Jesse Chavez, who is a lead engineer on the Data Transfer Project out of Chicago. He was coming in and knew he'd come late possibly.
I'm here.
Oh, hey, Jesse. We work on portability at Google. I want to tell you a little bit of what that means and kind of our background and how we approach the space, and then a little bit about the Data Transfer Project. So yes, originally the portability effort at Google was called Data Liberation. It was called the Data Liberation Front. We've been looking at portability as something that we felt was very important, not specifically for the business as a whole, but simply because we thought it was a good idea. Since for over 10 years, we first blogged about it in 2009, and we've got a number of products we've been working on in that space. We actually launched our own takeout product in 2011. And what we see, and remember, we have a very distinct view on this from the users that come to get their Google data. There are two big primary things that they're looking for. And I guess that's representative of the current state of the world of data rather than the future state that a lot of, I did that on purpose. No, I didn't. That a lot of you are looking at. But what we see is that users, when they're looking at portability, have generally either want to, believe it or not, just back it up or view it. We get that's the plurality case for us. They actually are worried that their data will get lost, or they want a way to simply look through it. And the other thing, which is the most interesting one for us as we thought about it, was they would like to take their data and go check out another service, either with one particular piece of data or maybe potentially even moving all of their data. And we've always believed that effectively the best product should win. And so we're very active and engaged in finding ways for even us, if we were unhappy with a product, a Google product, making easy ways for users to move their data from Google to other products. The current, actually, this is outdated as of a day ago. We updated this just yesterday a little bit, but just the UI. But there's a single place at Google where right now 50 different products, consumer products, there's other 20 kind of related services and products that users can take and move their data directly to as a download, or move it directly to other services. We also, an important part of this is making sure it's extremely visible to users. We make it available in a number of other places, including a Google dashboard, as well as some in-product instantiations of this so users know how to access it, because I think availability and discoverability is a challenge for, I think, all of us as people who are working in the portability space, because people don't actually understand that they have not only the right, but also the ability to move their data where they want. And one of the approaches we've taken, and we do a pretty good job of this given existing standards, actually. We're leading the way on making sure that users can get their information in the format that's most relevant for them. This is just one example of the multiple formats we provide, leading into standards, of course, where they're available. The last piece I just wanted to touch on in terms of existing work is that we actually already have the ability to directly transfer information, which is one big challenge because downloading information is only so useful, and being able to move directly to competitors or to other services is something that we thought it was important to support. There's actually one more service we support right now, which is box.net. But the problems that we saw around portability are not things that we felt we could solve simply by creating a single tool in Google. And so a while ago, this is 2017, we started talking about it deeply. We started working with some other folks in industry to create an open source solution to address some of the challenges we saw with data portability. We announced last July with the 4 partners that you see on the screen, and we have been talking with a lot of other individuals and partners as well. So the things that we are focusing on, first of all, we're looking at primarily user data. The system that we built could certainly be used for any number of types of enterprise data as well, but our focus is on the user use case. Privacy and security were critical. We have a white paper that we published that you can access at datatransferproject.dev. We talk about ways to address both privacy and security issues. An important part of this is reciprocity as well. Something that I think other people have touched on a little bit is that it's important that we can trust the destination of the place we're putting the data. And part of that is making sure that we can get data out of the systems where they're going in. And I think the last piece is recognizing there's all different types of data, and we want to be careful to create a system that is aligned with the incentives of the companies that are currently holding that data to make it practical for them to move it. So we want to make sure that we're focused on the user's data and not proprietary algorithmic data that might potentially be exposed. So what is the problem with portability today? Well, at a really high level, if we want to be able to move data from one company to another, independent of some of the solutions that you've all heard here, something like what DigiMe is looking at, where they would kind of sit in the middle of all that, and similarly with Solid Interrupt, just even getting to one of those providers right now, getting to that state, requires, unfortunately, a whole massive web of different adapters and software to be built. We also have a challenge that most folks are mobile, so I don't even know if they could download 500 gigabytes of photos onto their phone, and even if they did, I'm not sure what they would do with it. And the n-squared scaling note is simply just an acknowledgement that if Google, for example, we're going to want to try and solve the problem for the whole internet, not only would Google have to build a way of moving every data type to every single other company in the world, Google would also have to build one for every single other company to transfer it to every single other company in the world. So those challenges are very daunting. So as we looked at what an ideal state of portability might look like, first of all, we want to make sure that all companies, large and small, can access this system. We want to make sure it scales so that no company needs to build enough adapters or enough data access points for the entire world, because that would be impossible for any one company to do. And we want to make sure that it enables innovation for any individual company that wants to enter a field and not be subject to a disadvantage simply because they don't have a good starting point in terms of users, so users can bring their data to them. So what is a data transfer project? We said we want to make sure we're being practical about this. We want to look at existing technologies where they exist. That means things like OAuth, things like web technologies. We want to try and make sure that companies only have to deal with their own APIs, not the APIs of other companies, because there's a bunch of risks and challenges associated with that. Making sure that companies actually are aligned in their incentives, focusing on their users, making sure that their users are the ones that they're caring for, and focusing again practically on what we can do in an iterative way. What is the first step that we can take right now to try and make the world of portability better, and can move us to a number of the future worlds that we were talking about previously. This is how it looks overall in terms of its function. I won't go too deeply into this, but I just want to acknowledge that there are a few different pieces to this. And because this is an open source project, there's a number of ways they can be swapped in. So for example, in terms of the APIs, it's currently using existing public APIs. There could be extensions to make other APIs available as part of it, but right now it actually just uses existing APIs from companies. The way authentication works can be swapped in for a number of different authentication formats. However, most of the code that we have is working off of OAuth, which is a standard around authentication. In terms of where the service runs, it can run as a fully cloud-operated system, or it can also run as a hosted system out of a server, or even, notably, I think it was about a week after our meeting with the Solid and Interrupt folks, one of our lead engineer, Brian Willard, actually created an adapter so that we could actually make it work to go directly over to Solid and Interrupt as well. And this is actually not only a totally open system in terms of participants, but also in terms of data types. So we are not thinking explicitly about one data type. Our focus right now is on user data, but that's still obviously a very large space. So any company can be involved, large or small. If there is some new data type that we haven't thought of, those data types also can be and easily supported. And it's been very interesting since we announced this last July, the number of other data services or data owners that have come to us talking about challenges they have around data portability. And we're looking for a solution that works for them. Anything from, I think the most interesting one for me has been looking at irrigation data and crop data is something that obviously isn't something that's front of mind for us at Google, but certainly is something we can support as part of the data transfer project. So all this is currently right now available in open source on GitHub. This is an old screenshot, but it looks mostly the same today in that there's a whole bunch of documentation, a whole bunch of work going on. We have currently adapters for a number of different verticals, we call them, or data types. And that things like images would be a data type. Just blobby storage generally, storage of big files. Things like mail and contacts. And recently, an addition of an adapter for social graph data and social network data. We have support for hosted and cloud solutions. We're also, as I mentioned, Solid and Interrupt is available as something that we can transfer into. And we're happily now working beyond simply the key industry players that we started with and some additional ones that have started to contribute, but also individual developers coming from academia, simply coming as individual interested developers and trying to address their particular use cases. We have a number of different working prototypes, and we expect to have some user-facing launches relatively soon, and so we're excited about that. In terms of where we're headed next, a big part of this, and you heard this as well, about Solid Interrupt, that we want to get more people involved. We're going to continue to design. We're going to continue to develop additional features to make sure things like retrying data as it's transferred works really well. To make sure authenticators are working and adaptable to a number of different new formats and new companies that we're engaged with. But also just making sure these launches are actually going out more widely. You might have seen us, we're kind of trying to get more involved in some of the different conferences that are available. The DigiMe folks, for example, were at My Data as well. We're also, doing work. Jesse was just working with some startup incubators last fall, and in addition, discussions with a number of different think tanks. So I think this is actually just a doubled slide from before. I just wanted to acknowledge that we are also looking at more and more data verticals, and we're looking for feedback about verticals that we should support that we hadn't considered, because again, we recognize that we come from a rather myopic view of what the world of data means, because we only know our users and the data that we hold. And so looking to talk to different shaped, different sized companies from different places helps us build a system that can support genuinely any data type to genuinely any other company. And I think that's where it's most interesting for me, the conversation that we have here with Future State, because a lot of the work that's required for us to get to a model where, for example, DigiMe or Solid can get access to the user's data, pull it in a format that makes sense for them. And I think the focus for them has been on some of these really sensitive, hard nuts to crack, like healthcare data. like financial data. Well, there's a vast wealth of information out there. There's a lot of different data types, and not all of them are naturally going to be something that you can build individual support for. So trying to figure out a way for users to be able to move that data into whatever system they like, whether it's a centralized system that does kind of hold it all in one particular place, or maybe allows for a more stepwise move towards that, where we see a few aggregators like Digime holding sets of user data. Either way, we think that the system that we've built is something that can support all of those things. We can go through a mock demo, but I think you've seen some similar things from other folks, so I think I'll actually probably hold off on that just in the interest of time.
Hey, Greg, that was terrific. Thank you so much.